Good evening and welcome to Across the Pitch. Today we have a very special guest joining us, and it's a bit of a rivalry episode, if you will, as we have Andrew Bolte, who supports two teams that you just would never see me wearing their crests, but he seems like a pretty nice chap anyway, even if we don't quite agree with the football teams that he roots for. So, Andrew, first, welcome to the show, and tell us a little bit about the teams that you support and what your involvement is with them.
First off, thanks a lot, Phil, for having me on your podcast. My name's Andrew Bolte, and I support Rochdale AFC in EFL League One and New Mexico United in the USL Championship. So I've been following Rochdale since about 2008 and following New Mexico United since their establishment in 2019. So.
The New Mexico United, you're part of the Curse supporters group, actually one of the founding members, and tell us a little bit about the Curse and what you do with them.
I was one of the founding members, one of the six of us that met up at Steel Bender Brewyard about a year and a half ago, I guess it would be now. And once the team was announced, and we decided that we wanted to establish a group of supporters. And when we started things up, we thought we'd be pretty happy if we had 50 people with us toward the end of the season. And now looking at it, it's over 300 members, and things are looking pretty good as far as that goes. And right now I'm the treasurer of the Curse. So trying to make sure that we have all of our accounts in order and can afford to make trips to find places like Colorado Springs, El Paso, and hopefully Phoenix once all this clears up.
We hope to see you over here as soon as this all clears up, and all have a dollar beer together and watch some football, because that's what it's all about. Now, you told me that before the Curse, you actually had some experience with supporter culture before that, right?
Yes. Before New Mexico United was established, we had a team in USL League Two, formerly known as PDL, called the Albuquerque Soul. And I was a part of the Sandionistas supporters group for that when it was established in 2013. So I went to almost every match I could go to for that. Went and traveled to FC Tucson a few times to watch our boys try and get a win. It never quite panned out. Got to go to Colorado Springs.
So that was when Rick Schultz was still coaching at Tucson, right?
Yes, it was. And I will say, I have a healthy disdain for Rick Schultz and company, just based on the number of times we've butted heads. So I come across it honestly. So
yeah, I mean, last season was the first season for New Mexico United, but it just seemed like one of those rivalries that took hold right away. And then there was the U.S. Open Cup match, and then, of course, there was a game at the end of the season, and it just seemed like, whenever the two clubs met, it was a draw at the end or coming down to penalties. And then we came in and signed Santi Moore away from you this year. So who are some of the guys that New Mexico has brought in, not only to replace Santi, but to kind of fill out the rest of the roster? Who should we keep an eye out for when you guys do come to town?
Well, I think that the Santi replacement, such as it is, I mean, I know there are a lot of fans who are upset that Santi left for what we consider our most bitter rival. I wish Santi nothing but the best until he faces us, and then I hope he loses. But as far as a replacement for Santi, we did sign Amando Moreno from Chicago Fire FC, formerly from New York Red Bulls 2. It looks like, based on his track record, he could be a pretty good player off the left. We also have Andrew Tenari signed from Tampa Bay Rowdies. I've seen him play before. I I have no reason to believe that he will not do very well in the Western Conference. And then we've got a couple of lesser-known players, Romeo Parks, formerly of Pittsburgh Riverhounds, and also Sligo Rovers in League of Ireland.
Oh, okay.
Seems to get pretty well in League of Ireland, but
where was he? He was Sligo.
He was their main forward. I believe he scored 10 or 11 goals with Sligo last season.
Oh, okay. So he was just recently.
He's technically signed with New Mexico on loan. So I don't know if that is with an option to buy or not. I think it's just seeing out the rest of his contract. But they were sorry to see him go. So that is a good sign. And then we have a rookie, actually wasn't drafted in the MLS Super Draft. He signed with us before that, Sammy Sergai from Xavier. And he looks kind of like an unconventional type of player, but he can get the goals in. And if he could keep up what he was doing in the preseason for us, we would be very happy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that New Mexico was a team that definitely had a lot of talent last year. And of course, you guys got off to that hot start. I think that ultimately with the U.S. Open Cup run, maybe just being an expansion team, you just didn't maybe quite have the roster depth and those extra games kind of added up. So it sounds like you guys have gone out and really added some depth to the roster where if you do, for instance, make a long cup run, that you're going to have solid guys to bring in off the bench and not just be kind of relying on the same 11 over and over.
Yeah, I think that's going to be down to what Troy Lesane does as far as adjustments, though. He does like to carry a very small roster, typically. I mean, I believe we have 23 players on our first team roster, which is less than most USL Championship clubs are going to have. The good news for us is I believe that our 1 through 23 is more established than it was in year one. We did have some very good players. I mean, you're obviously familiar with Kavan Frater from his time,
yeah.
Right? There are some fans here that weren't sorry to see him go necessarily. I am not one of those fans. I think he is a very special player, and we're going to have some trouble replacing the goals that he provided. But if Romeo and Sammy and Amando can fill that hole, then we'll be okay. So it's going to depend on how that goes. I think we will be more solid defensively this year. We did bring in Kalen Ryden from Real Monarchs, David Najem from Tampa Bay, and I'm trying to think if there was one other. I know there was one other, and I can't remember it off the top of my head. But we before we were kind of if we didn't have our top 4 players in, we had problems. I think now if someone is injured or has to serve a suspension, there are going to be players that can step in to fill that line. And maybe the Austin match was not the best barometer for that necessarily, but we didn't allow them any real opportunities other than the penalty that Andre Lima put away. And I mean, it was a 1-0 loss, not the most fun match to watch live, but our defense was quite stout compared to what it had been in the past.
Well, I mean, we're only one match in this year, so I mean, it's hard to really take anything away from one match. I mean, one thing I did want to ask you about. So, do you still have Cody Meisel in goal this year?
Yes, we do. He had actually gone on trial with New York City FC.
Okay.
And actually showed up pretty well. I believe it was against Corinthians in a preseason tournament down in Florida. But he chose to remain here rather than go to New York City. So he is expected to be the starting keeper. Ben Borey is still the second keeper, but we do have a third keeper, big Philip Beigel, who has experience in the German, I believe, 4th division, and he could be pushing for some minutes as well.
So it sounds like Meisel wanted to stick where he knew he's going to get to playing time. And one of the things that we talk about a lot in the USL is, especially with the number 2 teams, that there's so many teams that might run through 5-6 different keepers in a year, and really having that veteran in there where you know you're going to have the same guy in the net every week, that puts you ahead of half the teams in the league right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you're familiar with that as well. You have Zach Lubin guarding your post, and I was kind of hopeful that Wojciechowski, I believe it was, would stick around, but he said no. So now you got Lubin, and Lubin's going to make that job his for years. It looks like so.
Yeah, well, Carl Wazinski, he unfortunately had some real bad injuries, and I think he had 4 different knee surgeries, and just kind of decided to call it a career. Was what happened with him.
Yeah, and that happens, unfortunately, at this level. I mean, I can think, because I've also followed UNM men's soccer, and so, I mean, there's several UNM players that make it in the USL level. Michael Reed, players like that. But also goalkeepers, and some of those sometimes have trouble sticking around, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, because it's one of those things where if you're making a working person's salary, I mean, a USL player is making a middle class person's salary, and you just can't afford to keep having surgery over and over again, and it's one of those things where it just, unfortunately, you're not making the money with the Premier League. At some point, you have to make the decision for your body.
Yeah, exactly. It's a quality of life decision. So I wish Carl the best, and I know that he was a good keeper for you guys as well. But
a legend around here, and a great guy too. I mean, I've met him a couple times. He's a great guy. The first guy to walk up and shake every fan's hand at the end of the game. We have a lot of love for Waz here.
Yeah, brilliant.
Now, let me ask you this. So are you originally from Albuquerque, or are you native?
I was born in Wichita, Kansas, and moved to Albuquerque when I was 5. So I've lived in Albuquerque for going on 35 years.
Okay, so then you're a Midwestern, Southwestern kind of guy. How did you get to be such a big soccer fan? I wouldn't call our part of the country necessarily soccer central, if you will.
It depends on. I mean, there are actually some really good talents down in southern New Mexico. But as far as soccer here, you're right. When I was growing up, it was just one of those sports that you played intramurally and didn't really give it any thought as far as professional or anything like that. So I didn't really start following the sport itself until I went to France for my senior trip in 1998, right as the Cup was going on. So I was not able to attend a match, but I was able to see the party atmosphere that was going on in the metro in Paris, and got to see U.S. get beat by Germany, I believe 4-0. At a cafe in France. And so that was maybe not the best World Cup for the U.S., but it did kind of show me that there is this other world of sport outside of basketball and baseball and NFL. And then I didn't really start paying attention to professional soccer until I picked up a copy of FIFA Soccer 2007 for PlayStation. And that's how I discovered Rochdale, actually. Because I was looking for a challenge, and they were the lowest rated team with the lowest budget and the lowest league in the game. So
dedication right there.
Right there. I was like, all right, I can get down with this. And then I looked up their history and saw that they had been in League Two since, I believe, 1974 without being promoted or relegated, that they'd never won a thing in their life. And I can relate to that. So, and I just happened to kind of latch on. That was the 2008 season. I believe that was the season where they actually went to Wembley for the first time in their history. They made it to the League Two playoffs.
You got to rub it in, because everybody knows that there's only one team that hasn't been there. We won't say who that is, but go on.
It'll happen. I mean. And you're in League One anyway, so you didn't need the benefit of that. But yeah, we got beat by Stockport, I believe it was, Stockport County, and stayed in League Two. But ever since then, I mean, I've been fortunate enough to see 2 promotions. I've been fortunate enough to see Joe Thompson score a goal to keep us up at the final match of the season. I've been fortunate enough to see us beat Leeds and take Tottenham back to Wembley in the FA Cup. It's been a terrific ride.
That's awesome, and there's nothing that I enjoy more than the passion of folks like you and I that follow a League One team passionately from 5,000 miles away, because I mean it doesn't get any more real than that, and I don't care if your team is Accrington's rival, which obviously they're right down the road, so they are.
Yep.
Kudos to you, my man, and especially since 2008. I mean, there was no such thing as iFollow in 2008. There was no such thing as watching the stats update on Google. I mean, what were you doing? Were you having them mail you the paper from Rochdale? 2 weeks later, you find out what the score was.
Actually, how I ended up following it, I don't know if you remember ESPN SoccerNet.
Okay.
Yeah, they actually did used to do. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but they did do match casts where they would show you like shots from where it happened on the pitch and give you kind of a minute by minute recount of how things were going. So for a very long time, I would either follow Rochdale that way, or I would follow Rochdale via BBC match reports, or through Twitter more recently, once the clubs finally kind of started getting a social media presence. It's almost as easy to follow a League One team anymore as it is anyone else. I mean, you can get match highlights same day, and it's a completely different world than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, well, with the iFollow, I just pay the $19 a month, and every Accrington game's right on my phone or my computer, and you can't beat it. And one thing about the iFollow that's really nice is because it's something where you're actually buying it from the team. Now, of course, the EFL's involved and they're getting their piece of the pie. But with the iFollow, I believe 70% of your subscription. So, I'm paying $19 a month. $15 of that is actually going to the club. And that's something that we just like to talk about a lot, is tell people to go out and buy that iFollow, because that's really your way of supporting your club over here.
And it's getting better and better all the time. Just because, I mean, I follow a few years ago.
You have replays.
You had video, but you didn't have a scoreboard and you didn't have commentary. Now you have a scoreboard, you have commentary. You can watch full match replays. You can watch extended highlights. You can watch 2-minute highlights. You can do whatever you want with it. It's terrific. I mean, I pay for the full yearly package just because. I don't know. I guess I forget to cancel it. So, but $140, that's not bad at all. I mean,
I think it's actually cheaper the way that you're doing it. It's if you pay for the whole year at once, it's like you said, it's like $140, and then it's $19 a month or $7 a game. So I just do the $19 a month and say, it was funny. A buddy of mine was saying that he was ordering that Tyson Fury fight, and it was $80. I was like, man, you watch 4 months worth of Accrington for that.
Exactly. You can watch a lot of people getting knocked out over those.
Oh, I think it's just one of those things where I think that the passion, obviously if you're watching League One or the USL or whatever, the skill level isn't going to be what you see in the Premier League or La Liga or whatever, but you can't beat the passion. And that's why, to me, I would rather watch, Accrington or Rochdale or Phoenix and New Mexico United than Manchester City or whoever. I think that you sound like you agree with that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm biased a bit too, because with clubs like New Mexico and Phoenix, you get that passion, that passionate fan base, and you get to watch some pretty skillful soccer as well. But you also get that in League One. Maybe not necessarily with the numbers for. I know Accrington has one of the smaller crowd bases, and so does Rochdale. But right. Those were there. They're there for the club through thick and thin. So I wouldn't have it any other way. had my dalliances following Fulham back in the Clint Dempsey days, but it just didn't quite stick. Rochdale has stuck with me for now going on almost 12 years, and I don't see it going anywhere anytime soon.
There's just something like you said about the way that there might be 3,000 fans at a game, but those 3,000 fans have more heart than the 60,000 fans that are at Old Trafford. I mean, it's just there. You can't match that passion. Now, one thing that you kind of went into that I wanted to go back to a little bit is how you're talking about USL and League One. And one of the things that we've kind of talked about is that we think that USL and League One, at least most of the teams would be kind of a fairly even skill level, but we thought that maybe the forwards are a little bit better in the USL and the defenders are a little bit better in League One. For instance, like we did a hypothetical if Phoenix Rising played Accrington Stanley show a few weeks ago, and what we kind of thought was that the offensive players in Phoenix were maybe superior to the offensive players in Accrington, but that the defensive back four for Accrington was probably better than the defensive end. And we just kind of thought that as a whole, if a USL championship team played an English League One team, that it would be generally a pretty fair matchup across the board with, I think, the US teams maybe having the better offensive players and the English teams having the better defensive players.
I think that is absolutely a fair assessment. I will say that I think League One is not to be denigrating towards USL Championship, but I think it's more of a men's league than USL Championship. You tend to get younger talents in USL Championship, whereas League One, you're going to get established professionals, particularly in the defensive midfield and the defensive back fours. So you're going to get a little bit of blood and thunder, as it were. Whereas USL, you may not always get that very hard physical play. But yeah, I think you're absolutely correct. I think on their day, a USL Championship team could expect to give a EFL League One team everything they would want and more.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're right on the money where USL is more of a finesse league, if you will, where the League One is obviously, you've got a 6'2", 190-pound center half on every team.
Yeah, or you're going to have center halves that are under 6 foot or something like that, and they're just not going to win. That was part of our problem last year. We didn't win aerial duels. We had guys who could chase after people, but yeah, you go up against those 6'3", 6'4" center halves on set pieces, and they're gonna have you for lunch every day.
Yeah, now we actually have a guy like that, Ross Sykes, who actually he was on the show with us, and he is just a stud in the backfield for Accrington. And one of the things though is whenever Accrington plays Rochdale, it always seems to come out in favor of you guys. I think he beat us like 4 times in a row. Why do you think Rochdale matches up so well with Accrington?
That's a good question. I think part of it is, I know last year we faced you guys at Accrington toward the end of the season when we absolutely needed the 3 points, and we may have mucked it up a little bit, but we did what we needed to, and I believe it was Ollie Rathbone who stepped up to win that match. So I don't have a good answer for it necessarily, because it feels like sometimes we tend to play to the level of our competition. Not to say that Accrington is a poor team by any stretch, but we get destroyed by the Portsmouths and the Sunderlands and the Ipswiches of the division, and then we tend to do a little better against teams that were on that level in the table. So I don't know.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I think that Accrington is almost the opposite. Where Accrington, for instance, we beat Portsmouth 4-1 and then lost to you the next week. I think so.
You have to rest your guys after a rough one, maybe. I don't know. And I mean, I'm grateful we've managed to get all 6 points this year, because otherwise we would be where Tranmere are right now.
Yeah, I mean, Tranmere right now, that's 33 right now for Tranmere.
I don't have the table in front of me, but I do know that if it weren't for the COVID-19 outbreak, we would have played them on St. Patrick's Day, and we had 4 points separating us. So it would have been a potential real frightening last 10 matches or so.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tight down there in the bottom of the table. I mean, of course, you had Barry, who was taken out of the league at the beginning of the season, and then there was Bolton, who had the big points deduction, and then that kind of really left it so there was just the one spot to fight over, and Tranmere has kind of been down there, but then you've got like Wimbledon and then MK Dons, and there's a few teams in there that Tranmere was going on a run, and I don't think that really anybody, I think from about Lincoln on down, is safe if they are able to end up finishing the season.
Yeah, if Tranmere is able to keep up this run, it will absolutely open up that last relegation spot. But I don't know. I feel like whatever it is, Brian Barry Murphy's men, they'll step up for him when the chips are down like this. They just tend to let themselves into these situations where they have to get something, and usually 3 points, in order to keep from going down. So we'll see what happens. I mean, if I had it my way, I would just have us play Southend United and Tranmere 20 times each, and then we'd win the league. So
yeah, I mean, I think that looking at those teams at the bottom there, that MK Dons are kind of the one team that doesn't have that experience that you just mentioned of, having been there and done that before. So if Tranmere does go on a run, I think that maybe MK Dons would be that team that would go down, because this is their first year up, and they've just kind of never done it before.
Well, from your lips to God's ears. So if there's a team that I would want to go down, it would absolutely be MK Dons.
We call them plastic around here.
No problem with Accrington. MK Dons can go down and keep going down, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I don't think that you get any argument from any else on that.
Absolutely.
Now, one thing, this is it's not really a listener question, because it's actually from Tony Robinson, who's one of our co-hosts, but he did want me to ask, why do you think it was that things didn't work out for John Coleman at Rochdale?
And considering that, I mean, I know that he's basically part of the furniture at Accrington. Since I was following him, except for when he went to Rochdale. I don't know. I think part of it was he was taking over a team that Steve Eyre just could not get going. Steve Eyre is still kind of a sore subject with a lot of Rochdale fans. And John Coleman, maybe even more so, because I think there's some fans who feel that he took them away from a more elegant style of play to a more functional style of play, and they didn't appreciate it, and it didn't get the results that they were looking for. So I don't have a good answer for it, other than maybe it was some budget issues or something like that. But I know that Accrington and Rochdale are roughly similar in terms of the resources that they have. So
yeah, I think Accrington actually is a lower budget. Andy Holt actually makes the budget public on Twitter, and I believe the last time he put it out, it's something like £2 million for the whole roster. I have no idea how they do that, but yeah, I mean, neither one of these teams.
Loan signings and kids, like what Rochdale has kind of had to trend towards lately because of all the injury problems we had to get the season going. There for a while, we had at least 3 players from the academy on our bench or starting. So
So now, are you guys in a position where you're able to give some of those academy players like a 2-year contract so you can try to sell them off, or you kind of guys having to have everybody on a 1-year deal right now?
You know, I know that they have done some re-signing of players to multi-year deals. They re-signed, I believe it was Ollie Rathbone to a 3-year deal to start the season off, and then they've even brought back some players that did well for us before, like Matty Lund from Scunthorpe. As far as the contract situation with the academy, I'll admit I don't follow it as closely as I probably should, considering that is the primary pipeline of talent for our team. I'm just happy when I see the next Daniel Adshead or Luke Matheson come through, and privileged to get to watch players like that grow and then get sold off in 18 months.
I think that as time goes forward, that for teams like Rochdale and Accrington, that the academies are going to be more and more important, because being able to grow that talent and then unfortunately have to be a selling team and sell it off, I mean, that's what's going to be able to keep us in League One.
Oh yeah, it's in particular with the current situation with COVID-19. That'll be what keeps the doors open, if anything. I know I saw a Twitter thread. I believe it was Kieran Maguire at Price of Football, I believe is his handle, and he had released some records regarding Rochdale, and they were showing it operating under 99% of turnover or something like that. Wow. That's thin the margins are in League One at the moment. So every season that we're in League One is something that's not supposed to happen. So I take it for granted. If we finish 20th every season and stay up, then I'll take that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that with Accrington, we're kind of in the same mindset. I mean, where, obviously have that dream season and make it to the championship. You can dream about that all day and all night. But like you said, I mean, just staying up in the league and being able to be a League One team year in and year out, I think that for a club that size, I mean, that's like winning the Super Bowl in itself every year.
Absolutely. I mean, I can remember oh goodness, what was it? 2010 or 11 or something like that, I believe it was. A team, Rochdale's team with Gary Jones and players like that, went to Southampton to St. Mary's and be a team with Adam Lallana, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, and Morgan Schneiderlin.
Wow!
So you get those kind of moments following these type of clubs. It's brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's especially why I hope, even with everything that's going on now, that they find some way not to have to cancel the FA Cup this year, because that's where teams get those moments. Like, for instance, I remember it was last year we had Paul Jamond on the show when Newport County was making that run, and he ended up putting in that goal against Manchester City and put one in against Leicester, and that's just something that you watch this guy in League Two out here scoring against these billion-dollar teams, and it's just that's what makes the moments that you'll never forget.
Oh yeah, it makes the FA Cup great, and to transition back across the pond, it was what makes the US Open Cup great as well.
Tell us about that run last year.
A team called Florida Soccer Soldiers take out Charlotte Independence, and then the main player from that, an amateur, gets signed to a professional contract with Charlotte. That sort of thing is terrific, and I know this year it appears that we won't be doing any Open Cup matches, unfortunately, because those are probably my fondest memories with New Mexico United as it stands. And I wish every club had an opportunity to go through what we went through last year. But yeah, this year it doesn't look like it's on the cards.
Tell us about that Open Cup run last year. Obviously, I was at that first game, but did you make the trip out here for that one? Or
unfortunately, I haven't been to Phoenix to watch a match yet. I was planning to go to the 3-3 draw, the second match of last season, and actually had a hotel room and gas money and everything. The home opener against Fresno, I cheered so hard I gave myself laryngitis for a week.
Oh boy.
So I stayed at home, and it was kind of, I didn't know what to expect. I was like, all right, I'll just go to this bar that we have established near my house as a watch party location. And we had 200 people watching New Mexico versus Phoenix for that 3-3 draw. And that's what kicked it all off. But as far as the Open Cup goes, I did not get to go with Phoenix. We watched that one, and that was a pretty incredible back and forth match.
Oh, yeah.
The game at Colorado Springs, we couldn't make it because it was like a week or two after that or whatever. So no one could afford to plan in time. And we managed somehow to make it past Colorado Springs. But
I watched that one. That was one where you had to come back. And also, didn't Colorado get out ahead early, and then you guys came back?
I don't know if they got out early necessarily. I do remember that we had to score a goal late in regular time to take it to extra time, and then Ronnie Argueta, I believe it was, got a red card for running into the referee, and from there it all went downhill for him. But then we got to face off against Colorado Rapids, and I was fortunate enough to make that trip to Denver, and that was a lot of fun. Taking, I don't remember the exact number of fans we had, but it was a couple hundred at the very least into Dick's Sporting Goods Park, and kind of make that section our own. And then we got to go to Dallas, and unfortunately,
yeah, I remember watching that Colorado game, that the second against MLS Colorado. I watched that one on TV too, and I think that you guys had more fans in their stadium than they did.
It felt like it at times. I mean, to be fair,
you were at least louder than they were.
We're pretty good, but I mean, that was just kind of you never get a first season, or you don't get a first season more than once. You don't get a first Open Cup run more than once. So everyone was going to take advantage of this kind of once in a lifetime opportunity to see how far we could go. But then we got to go to Dallas to SMU's college soccer stadium, which, I mean, that felt all very familiar. Looks a lot like University of New Mexico's facility, but that was played in, I believe, heat index of 107 or something like that, which, I mean, obviously Phoenix, heat, whatever, but you had humidity on top of that. And yes, it wasn't any fun at all. But and then got to fly up to Minnesota, and a beautiful stadium, and 3 minutes of the best soccer of our lives, and then we finally saw what an MLS team can do when properly made. So.
Yeah, I actually Minnesota is a team I supported the MLS, so I watched that game, and yeah, they really they just had a club that was really solid on defense last year, which is something that is unusual for any team on this side of the pond. But with guys like Iko Pare in there, they're just the best in the business in terms of U.S. Center backs.
Absolutely, and the difference in just the amount of time that you get on the ball from that level. Once you're going against the best of the best in terms of that, it is a different standard. But I'm still proud of how our boys acquitted themselves, and it was neat to be able to get to see all these different stadiums and get to meet all sorts of different fans. Minnesota's fans, exceptional fans. So.
Yeah, with the Wonder Wall up there, they really have a good supporters group, and I planning to get up there someday. But being a Phoenix guy, whenever I visit Minnesota, it's going to need to be July.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's when we went, and yeah, I mean, it was nice up there, nice and lower or mid 70s, low 80s, beautiful weather. If I could take that stadium with me and pack it up and put it down in Albuquerque, I'd do it tomorrow. It's a beautiful facility.
Oh yeah, the Allianz. That was the first year they had it open. We have Callum Williams, who is the Minnesota commentator. He comes on the show with us once in a while, and he's told us all about that place. And it's just an amazing facility. And now you guys, like you said, you play at the college stadium down there, but you really packed them in. What you can get about 14,000 in there, is it? That you guys get in for soccer?
Actually, currently we play in the Albuquerque Isotopes baseball stadium. Isotopes Park.
Baseball. I'm sorry.
That's okay. And I mean, there are times I wish we could play in the college stadium, to be honest, just because. Particularly for Open Cup, it would be wonderful to actually host the match. And right now we're kind of at the mercy of when there's an open date for the Isotopes, because we have to balance soccer with baseball and everything else. But yeah, I believe we averaged nearly 13,000 fans last season, and they're looking to somehow get above that. So I don't know how well that will happen now with the COVID-19 outbreak, but there were certainly people looking forward to the match against El Paso to kick off the season.
Yeah, that's just an incredible crowd for second division, and as much as there is a rivalry between Phoenix and New Mexico, it's fantastic to see that kind of excitement about any team on this side of the pond, and just see that the sport growing and growing. And now speaking of the rivalry, and I personally, I'm not a person who gets too much into rivalries, except during the 90 minutes the game's happening, and then after that I'm ready to be friends with anybody and everybody again. But I think that you were spot on when you said that New Mexico is Phoenix's most hated rival. At least that would be from the players themselves, because we had Adam John on the show a couple of weeks ago. Now, of course, he's moved on to Atlanta United, but Adam John, he's an Arsenal supporter. So we asked him what team is the Spurs of the USL, and he said New Mexico. So I wondered what you thought about that, and you had any banter back for Adam John on that.
I mean, if Adam and the other Phoenix players are hating New Mexico that much, it must mean we're doing something right. So.
Yeah, I thought that was a good bit of banter right there, and
well, I mean, and the record speaks for itself regarding Phoenix. I mean, they set the regular season record for points in the Western Conference last season. They have the golden goal scorer. They have all these players that they can. I mean, they sold off Adam John for $100,000 or whatever. So, but if we can not lose, if we can play against you guys and take you guys to the limit and have to get a goal from Calistri to get a draw here and all that, then we're playing on your level. We're doing something right. And then we just have to figure out how to keep that going for the entire season.
Yeah, absolutely. In the games that I watched last year, there was not a team that played us tougher outside of obviously Salt Lake, but that whole Four Corners Cup, I mean, Colorado Springs has been, they've had their issues, but otherwise the other three teams in the Four Corners Cup with Phoenix and New Mexico and Salt Lake is really kind of the strength of the Western Conference, and I'm excited for that Four Corners Cup again this year.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, it was great you couldn't have drawn it up any better last season. It comes down to the final match of the entire tournament against all four teams, and it came down to the final 5 minutes of that final match to decide who took the cup home. So I wish it would have been us. That would have been horrific for banter purposes, but I know that Real Monarchs are pretty happy with having that and the USL Cup in their back pocket. So
that actually reminds me of it's actually not even just the players. When I interviewed Rick Schantz towards the end of last season when they were getting ready to play Salt Lake for the Cup, and I had mentioned to him in the interview that a draw would mean that New Mexico, and he said, "Okay, well, we need to either win or lose then."
Well, at least he's fighting for a result. So,
but it's all in good fun, and I mean this has been a great chat. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but was there anything about New Mexico or Rochdale that you wanted to talk about that we hadn't talked about here so far?
Unfortunately, I didn't come with a script, so I don't really have anything else. But again, thanks for having me on the podcast. It's been great fun, and hopefully we can do it again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Andrew. It really has been a lot of fun, and I learned a lot about New Mexico and Rochdale, which is exactly what all of our listeners exactly have been wanting their whole lives.
Yeah, exactly. and they didn't know that they wanted it, but they got it. So.
But I mean, this has really been so much fun. It definitely, whenever the season gets started again, and whenever you get to Phoenix or I get to New Mexico, I'm gonna buy you a beer, and we will, we'll wear our Phoenix and New Mexico and Accrington and Rochdale stuff all together and take one big picture, cheersing the beers, and prove that no matter what team you root for, we're all friends of the football community.
Absolutely, looking forward to it.
Me too. Thanks, Andrew. You have a great one.
Yes, sir. You do the same, Phil.
Good night.
Good night.